Hey, we're recording. This is Dr. Luke Johnson, authoritatively introducing Ostick and Jordan to Chapter 24 of the Abridged Golden Bough. This is a very important chapter, and we've been off for 2 weeks taking care of a variety of issues in our personal lives. And I did not have an opportunity to elaborate on all three sections. And though I could have done it, it seemed like such a pivotal group of subchapters that I rationalized breaking it down into three parts. So today we're going to look at the shortest part. I'm actually going to have Jordan read the introductory section for us, and we can have a little bit of a discussion of that. And I think that will probably take up about 20 minutes of the presentation. If for those of you who've been following along, these go long. And after that, we're going to go deeper into the uh, historical, archetypal psychology of the Apollo missions. But before we do all of that, I wanted to kind of just go around to these images that we have here on the title slide and some of the topics that will be part of that psychohistory that we explore are the potentially looking at JFK and Marilyn Monroe as avatars of the alchemical sacred marriage, something that we've discussed here throughout our study of the archetypal history of the Apollo missions, is how there seem to be interlocking time elements between these world historical events. Specifically, we looked at the Trinity test earlier in this series, but something I've neglected and not really talked about a great deal is the initiation of the moon missions by JFK, specifically with his race to the moon speeches that were given at Rice and before Congress. So we're going to look at that a little bit. I want to talk about the symbolism of actually capturing the Earth from space, possibly it being a mandala symbolism in the language of Jung. I want to go deeper into the unintentional, from the perspective of men, symbolism of the NASA logo and connect it back to the Mercury missions and go deeper into the understanding of what is contained therein. And we'll close things out by looking at insects and bees. Insects have popped up already in our study, specifically when we looked at the moon buggy and its journeys across the lunar surface, connections to Edgar Allan Poe and Jung's synchronicity theories. So those are generally the major topics we're going to talk about today, but it is going to go so deep, and it's really going to reveal a lot about the alchemical movements of the Unus Mundus, I believe. So I'm just here figuring it out with everybody else. I'm going to make some mistakes, but I think I've come back with some interesting material. So before we get into it, Ostick, Jordan, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Ostick?
Oh, I'm really excited to, get into what you're going to talk about the bees because in the chat you mentioned a lot of things about the bees and, things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious about what direction you're going to take it in.
Well, it's the very last slide too, so hopefully you'll hang on for that. Ostick's great. It's 2 a.m. in India right now, so we'll see if he hangs on till 5 a.m. But why don't we go to the opening slide to discuss the first section of chapter 24? This section, the killing of the divine king, really motivates a lot of people to study the Golden Bough in general. And this first section is called the Mortality of the Gods. And I figure rather than trying to sum it up, it would be better just to confront Frazer's words in and of themselves. And Jordan, since you're such a great narrator, could I get you to read 3 paragraphs for me?
Sure. The killing of the divine king, the mortality of the gods. Man has created gods in his own likeness, and being himself mortal, he has naturally supposed his creatures to be in the same sad predicament. Thus, the Greenlanders believed that a wind could kill their most powerful god, and that he would certainly die if he touched a dog. When they heard of the Christian God, they kept asking if he never died, and being informed that he did not, they were much surprised and said that he must be a very great God indeed. In answer to the inquiries of Colonel Dodge, a North American Indian stated that the world was made by the Great Spirit. Being asked which Great Spirit he meant, the good one or the bad one, oh, neither of them, replied he. The great spirit that made the world is dead long ago. He could not possibly have lived as long as this. A tribe of the Philippine Islands told the Spanish conquerors that the grave of the Creator was upon the top of Mount Kabunian. Hitsi Abib, a god or divine hero of the Hottentots, died several times and came to life again. His graves are generally to be met with in narrow defiles between mountains. When Hottentots pass one of them, they throw a stone on it for good luck, sometimes muttering, "Give us plenty of cattle." The grave of Zeus, the great god of Greece, was shown to visitors in Crete as late as about the beginning of our era. The body of Dionysus was buried at Delphi beside the golden statue of Apollo, and his tomb bore the inscription, "Here lies Dionysus, dead, the son of Semele." According to one account, Apollo himself was buried at Delphi, where Pythagoras is said to have carved an inscription on his tomb, setting forth how the god had been killed by the python and buried under the tripod.
And slide 485.
The great gods of Egypt themselves were not exempt from the common lot. They too grew old and died. But when at a later time the discovery of the art of embalming gave a new lease of life to the souls of the dead by preserving their bodies for an indefinite time from corruption, the deities were permitted to share the benefit of an invention which held out to gods as well as to men a reasonable hope of immortality. Every province then had the tomb and mummy of its dead god. The mummy of Osiris was to be seen at Mendes. Thynos boasted of the mummy of Anhori, and Heliopolis rejoiced in the possession of that of Tamu. The high gods of Babylon also, though they appeared to their worshippers only in dreams and visions, were conceived to be human in their bodily shape, human in their passions, and human in their fate. For like men, they were born into the world, and like men, they loved and fought and died.
Thank you so much. So, I think this really just sets the stage for the movements that are going to come next in terms of the divine killing of the king. So, I don't want to spoil that too much. But I did have some initial impressions from this. I think the first thing in Western society that struck me about this was really the concept that gods could die at all. Like, it's not something I had really come across in the literature so far. Not that I'm some great classicist or something like that. But I think because of the Western perspective being so steeped in deism, classical theism, and Christianity, where you have a God that dies and then resurrects, or a God that is somehow outside the established order and fine tuning things or whatever. The fact that there could actually be graves to gods was such a strange thing to me, and I think it's helpful to go across this passage because it puts us in the correct frame of mind and how revolutionary it is to have these philosophical abstractions and to have these religions that involve conquering death on behalf of a god man. Um, those were my impressions. What about you guys?
I mean, one impression that I got from the final paragraph that Jordan just read was that he says that the gods were not exempt from dying, but later on, a new invention gave them a new life. It sounded to me as if a new technology that they had discovered that allowed the men to live, and then it even changed their cultural image of themselves and their god. And now in their midst, even gods could, resurrect or like be preserved as mummies, as so it's like technology is creating an effect on mythology itself. I mean, that is what I got. I mean, if they're implying that this invention it created this from men,
That's a
this is.
fascinating observation. If I can add something to the point that you've already made, it makes me think about AI, right? There's some talk about, even amongst the computer geeks and things like that, about summoning demons through the AI or talking about AI religion or AI gods or whatever. And again, do we have a technology that is going to rewrite our understanding of what God is and what God is capable of doing? So it's not just mummification, it's actual computers that could be doing this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's the concept of God only extends to what how our minds can actually perceive it. I mean, it might be present as an infinite thing, but if our mind is able to only see 1/10 of it, so that is what will keep repeating ourselves. And if you form a culture where everyone believes that, there's a limiting belief, and you set constraints around it, then it creates problems, and it can be used to reshape history itself, like reframe words, like people are now calling, like you're saying, like this is God, like AI will be the new God or something like that. So
Yeah.
there are reframing definitions, and because this is what the culture is now. Culture is affecting what we call divine.
It makes me wonder if um, the idea of a God man that conquered death with Jesus Christ, if that idea would have arrived on the same timeline had mummification not been a thing, right? Like, how much did that rewrite the understanding of what God was to make the conquering of death possible? Just as much as, say, um, Greek philosophy prepared people to understand that there could be a God that was divorced from all the personal incarnations of all the gods of Mount Olympus, that there could be a one or something like that beyond the established order. The other thing is, you mentioned, or maybe Fraser mentioned, I forget at this point, how the mummification eventually started extending to not just the gods and pharaoh and whatnot, but to other individuals as well. It makes me wonder about AI, how that might be centralized but then decentralized, and people, eventually it's like uploading your consciousness, like a form of digital mummification that will be available to everyone.
Yeah, it's so weird. It makes me curious too if people, I don't know, like the perspective of what is and is not magic. I'm not sure. Like looking back on it, this seems like magical ritual,
Mm.
very
Oh yeah.
obviously. When I see the AI stuff where they're revitalizing dead family members, that also seems very similar to me.
Hmm.
But it's interesting to kind of observe other humans who don't necessarily acknowledge the reality of magic, participate in it. And I'm sure there's things that I'm not above everything, is not what I'm trying to say, but it's very fascinating. Like when you're really immersed in something, are you really even seeing it in that light? I and did the people when they were doing
Yeah.
the preservation methods, were they viewing it that way?
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. We've talked about this throughout our discussion about how we can be so immersed in a thing that we don't understand, that we're caught up in magic or mythology. I mean, I've been forwarding you guys these Wisdom of the Dream installments and episodes on Carl Jung and his influence on his successors. And James Hillman is a big proponent of this. Like, the myth is something that you can never get outside of. And he's, in that documentary that I speak of, which is on YouTube, if anybody wants to check it out, I highly recommend it. That came out in like the 80s, and he's very boldly just being like, yeah, science is our new mythology. Like, mythology is embedded in everything. It's inescapable, even if you try to suppress it. So, yeah, it's just a continuation of this idea that we are immersed in a thing that we think we have overcome, but we haven't.
Yeah, so true. Also, this makes me think of modern day religion and Catholicism in particular, where you have the relics. I'm not sure if that's the word
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
use for
Yeah.
it, but they have bones and different things of the saints, and I have some personal opinions about that, but those don't matter. What I see here is kind of this continuation of this tradition, and you see a lot of Western religion and magic, I would say, really influenced by, like, there's a thread basically, and there's a lot of things that happened in the mystery schools that continue to this day, though many people are not seeing they're not even aware of what mystery schools were.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, they may have a different mechanism to explain that. Like, there's all sorts of remains. I think there's probably even some mummification remains, like in the Catholic Church, and what animates them. The idea of them like weeping and bleeding and things like that. I mean, uh, I'm not even going to pretend. I'm not. I didn't grow up Catholic. I don't. I don't have a good understanding of the of the belief system that would make one want to hold on to these relics. It captures the imagination. I have to say, it's like a very fascinating thing to think about these like relics um and doing these strange miracles. But I think a lot of what this idea that Fraser is talking about here, and the killing of the king that comes from the mortality, is ultimately it's going to set up a belief in reincarnation. So when the king has to be put down as a result to ensure the stability of the community, the flourishing of the community, it's like not that big a deal, because ultimately what's going to happen here is that he's going to like transfer, like his soul, his spirit, his consciousness is going to be like transferred into the successor in some way. And that got me thinking about, like, to take it into a different modern context, like thinking about like the royal family, like in England. Like, we don't have kings, so I don't really think about it a lot, but um I have to wonder, like, is there some sort of like belief in metempsychosis or the transmigration of souls or something like that going on within modern monarchy?
I
Yeah,
mean,
oh, go ahead, Ostic.
I think even if they don't believe it, they're acting like it anyway. So they might not believe that they're transferring souls, but what's effectively happening? Their their all their finances, all their titles and rights, they are being transferred in the exact same way. If they had literal belief of a soul transference, the the result is the same. I mean, the way you talked about, the king being discarded, and it's not a big deal that you replace them with a successor. So it's like a deeply conservative system, but it's like on a minute scale. If you're in the society, it would seem like progress, but if you zoom out far enough, it would seem like a very conservative system. So it's like it's trying to stay the same, doing everything it can to say it stay the same. But like if you're sitting beside and seeing all this action, seeing all these rituals, it would seem like, oh, a progress is being made, this new guy is here. you know
Mm.
this is what I think is happening on a that these scales. I mean, you also
Well,
talked about one final
oh,
point.
sure, sorry.
You talked about this AI thing, that it's supposedly infiltrating, every part of the society. Like first a few people had it, but then they are now passing it on to, other people. So it's the same thing with the internet. So internet was developed as a defense, I think, in as it was called ARPANET in the 60s. It has been around, and for 30 years no one cared. And in 1992 it got, some sort of consumer release. So these things happen like this. I mean, even with AI, I see a lot of hype marketing for it, because all these tech billionaires like Nvidia's CEO, he keeps like saying things like it's going to change society, it's going to change society. He is creating that reality. It may not be reality, but by constantly saying that this will happen, this will happen, he's creating fear in the minds of people. And it will eventually happen, because if ultimately a lot of people start believing him, it will start to happen, because people are acting like it anyway, even if it's happening or not. So it will actually manifest itself in reality. That is what I see from him, because he's saying, such bold statements, like someone else will replace your job. If you don't learn AI, someone who knows AI will replace you. So it's like, if you tell that to a normal person, he's going to act in a different way. He's going to, I got to learn AI. Now, Google Gemini, they're offering their software free of cost to students. Like, what will this do to students, to college students? I mean, they'll be used to using AI in their entire workflow right from the start of their academic career, you know. And when they'll get out, they might not have the skills that the previous generation had to learn by themselves, because AI, it makes things very easy. You don't learn things by hands. If you're like a coder, you don't need to know a lot of code. You can just prompt it and it will create the code for you. So if students are churning out like this, the students that come out, they will be dependent on AI for the rest of their lives. So they are trying to create customers. That's a real cultural change that's happening. Like from what I see, what's happening. I mean, they're giving it for free to students, but what are they creating? They're creating dependence on a system that
Right,
they
which
own.
right, which in a way could be expanding what God actually is, right? We see a lot of the modern conception of God, and I'm not saying this is necessarily wrong. It's a view that I've become more sympathetic to, but the idea that like God is operating through all the individuals, and if people become dependent upon the AI, and the AI is rewriting how we understand God, do the individuals start losing their individuality and start becoming essentially extensions of the Godhead? But that's a huge topic. I mean, yeah, we have so much to cover. Do you guys want to talk about Fraser more, or should we get into the wacky stuff?
Let's go.
All right. Okay. So, all right. So, we will go deeper, at least into section 2 next week. I think we're going to preoccupy ourselves with section 2 next week. Um, okay. So, what has been really rewarding in recent installments that we've done, looking at the archetypal symbolism with all the NASA stuff, is the more we try to wring out information from this logo, this famous meatball logo, and really its corresponding logo that supplanted it, and then ultimately it came back. Which, you know what, that's probably an interesting story in and of itself, which is the worm logos. You had the meatball logo, the worm logo, and now this logo is back, the meatball logo. I have to think about that. But there's all this serpent imagery mixed up into it, and I think that's very obvious to like a lot of first grade truthers, right? And we talked about how it's just like the inference that they make from all this is like, oh, NASA, serpents, devil, bad, right? And we've been looking at this more from the idea that the serpent is a representative of Mercurius, this trickster psychopomp god figure that has elements of good and bad in it, invoking us to go on a journey of consciousness, which I feel like it just tracks more and more the more we look at this. And something that we've never really looked at when considering the serpent imagery of the NASA logo, and this occurred to me when thinking about the Apollo program, is that one of the most famous stories from mythology involving Apollo is the slaying of the dragon at the site of the Delphic Oracle. And this had to have like archetypal meaning. I think the idea here, since if I can just kind of riff, and this is all, everything I say here is like is a work in progress. Like this is research for a book I'm putting together. But like I think the idea is that the spirit Mercury and this Ouroboros or whatever is this sustaining element, or a sustained element, I should say, that occurs throughout the whole alchemical process. It is part of the prima materia, the initial sort of chaotic matter. It is this tension that is holding together the opposites of consciousness and unconsciousness, is this mediating factor. And then ultimately, it does get associated with the philosopher's stone or the philosophical child through the alchemical process as the output of all these things. And in the Apollo Python story, we have the slaying of this python, of this dragon, that inevitably sets up the prophetic priestesshood of the temple. And I think what this might have something to do with is the slaying um, of that chaotic primeval force within the earth, and a separation with that solar egoic consciousness of Apollo that then ultimately is striving for reunification with the feminine aspect through the moon. I think that we are getting some sort of story about that. And the reason why I think that is interesting is that when I got deeper into the story about Apollo, he actually slays the dragon with arrows. I did not know exactly how he killed the dragon. And it's like, and isn't this interesting that our space program essentially has projectiles, right? Like it's based on missiles, when missiles come from arrows, right? And the missiles get turned into rockets. And it's almost like the rockets themselves are arrows. And not to mention, if you look at these um, flight trajectories of the Apollo program, we have them in a serpentine way coiled around the Earth, but then they coil around the moon as if that mercurial element, that serpent, is moving from the terrestrial to the extraterrestrial place. And I don't know how many of these things have to add up for you to go, that's it. That's it. But that feels kind of right to me. I mean, what are you going to say? Oh, Luke, are you saying that like we really fire rockets into a dragon and recreate this mythology? I think these are just kind of continual expressions of the archetypal narrative. We talked about this in terms of being a mythologem. So I have this offering here. Is everything going to track one to one? I don't necessarily think so, but I think there's kind of enough there to say that it's expressing the pattern again.
I mean, I like it.
You like it? What do
It's
you like it?
a it's a compelling imagery. I mean, these things, like especially these flight plans and trajectories, they have to be planned out so meticulously, because if they're planning them, you know. So it's interesting that they have this serpentine shape, and it's like, it's not, I don't think it's lost on them. I mean, you're talking about, Apollo killing the serpent with a bow and arrow. So what's the name of the protagonist in 2001: A Space Odyssey? It's David
Right.
Bowman.
Exactly.
And yeah, so it's like that he is connected, and he is connected to Apollo itself. So it's like there is an symbolism there. So I really like it. Maybe it could be connected to Orion as well, because it's like he's a hunter. So I don't know.
I
Maybe
haven't
for
got,
future
I think
things.
it is, yeah, I think it is going to be connected to Orion in some way. An aspect that I've not been able to drill down on are these constellations that are on the blue background of the meatball logo. Like no one really knows what those constellations are. Some people just go, oh, they're just random. Some people suspect that one of them is Orion, and that might get into it as well. But right now, there's no real consensus about what those stars are. They don't seem to have significance. But like so many things here, I'm not really claiming that anyone is trying to do this. Like, do I think like someone at NASA is like, hey, let's make it look like a snake is going around the Earth and then around the moon? I think this is just the collective unconscious like finding ways to express itself. Um, the other interesting thing about these Apollo flight plans, I didn't bring it up here, and I want to think more about it, but one of them is very phallic, the way that they show it going around the Earth and then to the moon and then back around the Earth. It's clearly like the Austin Powers joke. It's like Wang, like it's clearly referencing like that. And what we're to make of that, if that's supposed to be kind of another instantiation of the solar reproductive member intruding upon the passive lunar space. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind, but I didn't want to include that because I'm not exactly crazy about having phallic conversations here, but it seems inevitable with these subject matters.
Yeah, it is what it is. Driving around DC and just being like, oh,
Yeah.
I know what that is.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the 8th grade boys are right, unfortunately.
Yeah. Isn't it weird that uh yeah, I remember going to field trips in DC and like the bad kids would be like, "Doesn't that look like this?" And I'm like, "Come on, grow up, guys. No way it's that." And turns out it is. So, yeah. Jordan, do you want to say anything else about this before we go to the next slide?
No, we can keep on trucking.
All right.
But I love this painting. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Okay. Let's
Oh, and it's
oh,
almost 11/22
it is almost 11/22.
next
The big
weekend.
day. The big day. That forever changed things, which is good. It's interesting. It's timing. It's working out with our whole Killing of the King reading here in the Golden Bough, and that's the interesting thing is that like I was digging a little bit into it. I was like, where did this whole idea that like Kennedy is like part of the Killing of the King ritual like come from? And it really, a lot of what we're doing here, it shares a lot in common with what Downard and Hoffman have done, but they always sort of posit that like secret societies are like orchestrating all of this, and rather than what I'm trying to even if there is a secret society element to it, I think God is ultimately in control, directing all of it, even through the secret societies, even through us at this very moment. So I don't want to like give anyone too much credit, because it's too, you guys know my perspective, it's too massive for a cabal or something like that to execute. And that's why I think some of the causative mythopoetic interpretations of what they do fail. It's But I'm not saying that there isn't something to that. And one of the things that um, Hoffman and Downer pick up on are the interconnected nature of these mythologisms. And we talked about how I sort of stumbled upon that with the Trinity test and the Apollo missions. But a big part of this is like what I said in the intro, Kennedy. Kennedy sets this all in motion. And I've been thinking about this, and I've been listening to Jung's Mysterium Conjunctionis as well. And really, there's so much in that text that's going to be relevant to this whole conversation that we've been having here. I've got a passage that I want Jordan to read here. Why don't we just have Jordan go ahead and read that? The one in the blueprint.
Yeah. The moon is the connecting link between the concept of the Virgin Mother and that of the child who is round, whole, and perfect. The new birth from the moon can therefore be expressed as much by the Christian's joy at Easter tide as by the mystic dawn, the aurora consurgens. For the risen king is the soul which is infused into the dead stone. The idea of roundedness is also found in the crown, symbol of kingship. Corona regis is cited as synonymous with ashes, body, sea, salt, mother, and blessed virgin, and is thus identified with the feminine element.
Okay, so thinking about all these things and thinking about the killing of the king ritual and Kennedy's connection to the Apollo missions, a big part of I think we've kind of concluded that the Apollo missions in some way are about the Philosopher's Stone, and the Philosopher's Stone is connected to this overview effect of the interconnectedness of all human beings sharing this gigantic one world that is emblematic or emblematized, if that's a word, in this blue marble that was on the title card that we started this all off with. And we talked about the alchemical marriage of sun and moon, and how that is necessary as a step to get to that new form of consciousness that has been injected into our reality. It got me wondering if Kennedy himself is kind of like a proto avatar of that red king, of that solar king. And I think there's something to that. Not to make, I mean, he does have auburn red hair if you go back and you look at old photos. Not that that should really count for anything, but I do find it interesting. But he gave this when he first announced that he wanted us to go to the moon. He did this on September 12th, 1962 at Rice University, which is home to the Rice Owls, which I'll address here in a moment. But he says, in short, we choose to go to the moon because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. He has a leading throughout this whole conversation. He talks about, well, we chose to go to the moon because it's hard and it's inexplicable why we want to go to the moon. Like, why does Rice play Texas in football? Like, it's kind of a cosmic joke in some way because Rice will never beat Texas, or maybe they have. I'm not exactly sure. Jordan can speak more to that than I can. But you can see this like rational organizing principle enunciated by what seems to be this forerunner of the Solar King. And it does seem, and I'm still learning all the different stages of like the Rosarium Philosophorum, but from what I understand, there might be like these king and queen that are like dissolved and they're and reborn in some way throughout the alchemical process. And I'm contemplating that, like I've said, that Kennedy is this red king, which would mean that he would have to have a white queen counterpart, which is going to feed into the next slide. And you can probably anticipate where this is going to go. I do want to say something about this, him making this announcement at Rice University. It's kind of to me, it seems like kind of a strange place to make a moon announcement. But when I'm thinking about the owl symbolism, they are this creature of the night. And you might be able to say that they are perhaps guardians or guard the gate to the moon in some way because of their association with the night. They're also frequently associated with illumination and higher consciousness, which in the context of going on this alchemical journey and producing the cosmic consciousness, it would be kind of interesting. So to think that he's giving this talk about the Solar King is giving this talk about creating a program that will harness our rational energies to penetrate the moon beneath these potentially lunar symbols. It makes me feel like I'm taking drugs. Like he's doing this like on a field that's got like an owl logo on it. So I don't know. I'll stop talking for a second.
I really like it's the fact he uses the word energies is very telling because he's making it clear that we need to direct our energies to some particular goal. Energies is the main thing. It's not that we'll give you jobs, we'll give you, you get good stipends for researching this. No, we'll have to direct our energies to this particular cause. That this is a dream, this is a vision for the future.
Mm,
And you talked about owls, and I mean, what came to my mind was the Bohemian Grove thing. And
yes.
there's a giant owl that they worship under. So, I mean, that connected with this. Just
Well,
that.
that's going to connect back to the Trinity element of this, the Trinity test, because um, I have to go. I don't have the research available to me right now, but there's a widespread belief that a lot of the Trinity testing was um, hatched at Bohemian Grove, right? That there's a pretty famous photo of Oppenheimer with some like I believe General Leslie Groves is there and a couple other high-ranking individuals. I can't remember. I can't remember. Maybe von Neumann is there as well. I'm not. I'm hesitant on it. Maybe Jordan can pull it up if she wants to. But the persistence of that owl imagery would potentially draw these two events closer. If you just if you just pull up Oppenheimer at Bohemian Grove, it's a pretty classic picture. So you've not seen the Ostic, you've not seen my next slide. Do you have any idea about if Kennedy is the solar red king in this alchemical marriage, who do you think might be the white queen? Because that's where this all led me. There it is. Yeah, Oppenheimer's cropped out of that one, but that's the photo. It's that's part of the same photo series, Jordan. Who do you think's the white queen, Ostic?
I mean, I've already seen the
Oh, you've
opening
already seen.
slide, so I
Oh
can
yeah,
guess.
I mentioned it during the opening slide, didn't I?
Yeah, so that's Mrs. Monroe.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Jordan, I can find it later if it's a little bit there he is. There he is. You can see him. He's the second from the left there. You can see he doesn't seem to be particularly happy about being where he is. So yeah, this is him at Bohemian Grove. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly how to say. See, there's a owl at Trinity, and there's an owl during the announcement of the moon speech. Have to think about it.
I mean,
I'll
even this
unless you revert to the idea of conspiracies and being like, see, this is the elites showing their plans.
I mean, this word energy is exactly the same as, I mean, the Manhattan Project was itself a huge undertaking that
Yeah.
all these disparate scientists they had to, concentrate their energies towards this one particular project, and they had $2 billion, $1945 invested into all of this. So, these events like Trinity Test and the moon landing, they are some big events, I think,
Oh
canonical
yeah.
events.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can go to the next slide. Unless Jordan's deep in the Bohemian Grove conspiracy now.
I expect most of our audience is familiar.
Yeah. You're telling me there's a big owl at Bohemian Grove? This is blowing my mind. It was voice, another connection between Bohemian Grove and the Apollo missions is that the owl, I think, is voiced by Walter Cronkite, or what is or was at some point. Ostic, I don't know if you know who Walter Cronkite is. He was like an American newsman. He's who people like he was like our oracle, like in America for 30 or 40 years. So if Walter Cronkite said it, you knew it was the truth. He also did narrations for Disneyland rides, things like that. I remember that going there as having him narrate something I was on, maybe at Epcot Center when I was a kid. But he also was primarily responsible for the coverage of Apollo 11. So that's intriguing to me. That's intriguing to me. If you go back and you watch the old newscasts, they're watching it land, and he's interviewing Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein, and they're watching the moon landing together, and it's very surreal. So, okay. So, yeah, talking about Kennedy as potentially the solar king in this arrangement got me thinking. Nothing about Jackie struck me as the White Queen, and I have no idea where she would fit in all of this. And I'm not even sure it's true. I went back. I was like, how do we know like JFK was like for sure linked to Marilyn Monroe? And the historical record is actually pretty paltry. Like we don't have like this smoking gun that like they were these luminous figures on the world stage that they had this moment where she sang him happy birthday I think 2 weeks before his birthday or something like that in 1962. They died roughly the same time. She died like I want to say less than 18 months before Kennedy. She died in 62 and he died in 63. But
it's interesting you say they're both luminous figures,
yeah,
the luminaries.
exactly.
But even if there's not these strong personal ties, they have been totally woven together in the cultural narrative, or you could even say like the spell being cast through the culture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, they really have. I mean, the evidence, like, why do people think this is happened is that there's really only record of like JFK meeting her once. There's always sort of conspiracy theories about how like she had inside knowledge and like that she was killed for that inside knowledge or something like that. She was like taken out. And then she was like having affairs with both the Kennedy brothers and all this crazy stuff. I don't know about that, but like Jordan said, like it's woven into our at least the American understanding of who we are, that these two individuals are associated. In some ways, you could argue they're more associated with one another than Jackie and Jack. But what I do find interesting is that she might be the manifestation of a really profound archetype, specifically the anima. I've been going deep on these uh, documentaries on YouTube with Marie von Franz, where she discusses at length the anima, and many of them, if not her alone, refer to Marilyn Monroe as like this ultimate um, uh, individual that the male fantasy is projected onto, right? And we see that the moon itself has all these male fantasies projected onto it as well. It's always considered to be feminine. It's always associated with mother goddesses. Um, Whoever it may be, Artemis, Virgin Mary, Diana. And I think there's reason to think that Marilyn Monroe herself is in some ways associated with the moon. There are lots of different reasons that we could go there. The one that's the most interesting to me is that she had this necklace and I'm not saying this is a slam dunk. I gotta get the name of this necklace. It's called like it's a what is it called? the moon. What is it? Moon of Baroda necklace. Okay. And she, like a wealthy jeweler, uh, gave this to her for, um, the gentlemen prefer blondes. And what was the movie about diamonds? Or diamonds are a girl's best friend or something like that. So she was wearing this incredibly expensive moon diamond around her neck, in what could be considered some of her more iconic performances. And then I think about this image of her when she was, I guess this is when she was married to Joe DiMaggio, who we've talked about, and perhaps her association with the moon, given that, what was it? Was it Apollo? I forget which one it was. It might have been Apollo 12 that was had a capsule named the Yankee Clipper, which is a reference to Joe DiMaggio. Not to mention all the Playboy stuff that we've looked at, and the first Playboy, and how that comes in to the symbolism of the moon. But her wearing this dress that got blown up, it's very similar. This white dress is similar to some of the images of the White Queen that are portrayed in union with the Solar King. Not to mention her name. Uh, Marilyn is a conjunction of Mary and Lynn. And Mary, like I've mentioned earlier, is one of these mother goddesses associated with the moon. And Monroe, maybe in some way too, you could say that. We looked at uh, Jim Lavelle naming one of the mountains on the moon, Mount Marilyn. So if, and I'm not really sure this is the case, I got to think through it a lot, but if there are forerunners of the actual alchemical marriage on Earth that are then somehow sublimated and transformed in that process, it seems like to me, maybe JFK and Marilyn Monroe would be good candidates to play those characters on the world stage. Am I reaching, or is this something? You guys tell me.
I mean, she's a pretty great representation of what you would say are lunar features. There's a lot of study of people's astrology and how that manifests visually.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like spot on, like very, very lunar, kind of more round, even her hair here,
Yeah.
like, it,
It's,
yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
it's kind of like moonshiny. It's kind of like creating a halo around her in some
uh-huh,
ways.
yeah.
And we see that too. I don't know. I mean, if I hyperfixated on any individual, could I say they were like a personification of the moon and a forerunner of the alchemical marriage that takes place in the sky? I mean, this is like, is this real, or do I have runaway poetic license that needs to be revoked?
I mean, only I don't know who would have the authority to revoke your poetic license. I don't know.
I, I don't know. I
You
mean,
don't need a
I
license.
guess that's the thing. It's like she seems like a symbol to me, but
I
I
mean,
mean, and it's very
it.
clear she was like wasn't she like the first sex symbol? Like it's very like, don't people just come out and say she was a sex symbol? But there's not really an elaboration about what that means. Oh, I mean, there's this great story that I found too that that's relevant to all of this. Apparently, Marilyn Monroe, she had like this reoccurring dream that um this was long before she was famous. Like, and by the way, she has a connection to the space program. She was like, when she was Norma Jean Dougherty or whatever, like she before she became Marilyn Monroe, she like worked at like a Northrop Grumman, like in a factory or whatever. But she had this recurring dream, or this very profound dream that stuck with her throughout her entire life, where she found herself entering a church naked, and everyone in the church like got on the ground and started worshiping her. And lo and behold, she becomes this like erotic, like fertility goddess in our culture, many, many years after the fact. It's like, so this raises an interesting question about what was the dream trying to tell her, or how much did she take that dream and like, I've got to live out this destiny.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, that is a life-defining moment right there.
Hmm.
I mean, what you talked about if you're reaching or not. I mean, it matters only if it's in the minds of the people that are living in that particular time. So it does not have to, so even if it's not real or they're doing it intentionally, it's still manifesting in the minds of the people in some way. That if they open the news and they see Marilyn Monroe singing happy birthday to the president, so they have this unconscious connection in their minds regardless of what their intentions are. So it's like emerging on its own, even if you're going to ascribe that to God, like, creating this whole scenario. But what I think is like it matters only if they're in the cultural zeitgeist and affecting each other, interacting with each other's symbols. So that's what I feel about this. I
I
mean, it's
it was
not
kind of
far from the
surprising to
truth.
me how few people had associated her with the moon. Like I found like an old playbill where like someone was like, "Oh yeah, we should put Marilyn's face on the moon," but that's no one was really consuming that. This was like a play about Marilyn Monroe, and this was like a one off thing. You don't really hear too much association. I guess it's more easy to associate Kennedy with Apollo since like his legacy is wrapped up in it. He's the one we choose to go to the moon. Like there'd be no Apollo, or like it was kind of like, oh, we've got to do the Apollo mission because our king was killed, and we've got to see this through. Which gets in the whole idea of like what the philosophical child or the philosopher's stone that's created as a result of going to the moon. It's like our conversation earlier about soul transference and what that means. Um, yeah, I don't. Jordan, had you ever associated Marilyn Monroe with the moon? Until I brought this up. Someone else did. You see this in the bottom left-hand corner. I didn't make it very large, but like some artist I found on like Pinterest or something like that put Marilyn Monroe in like a Mercury 7 spacesuit. Like she's like some kind of astronaut. And maybe they kind of tapped into this as well. They figured this out. Or maybe they're just like playing around with images and they go, wouldn't it be wild if Marilyn Monroe was an astronaut? Thoughts, or should we move on? You're muted, by the way, Jordan. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, I was in a different tab. I hadn't thought about it when you present it to me. It seems reasonable that she kind of embodies a lot of these aspects. And I think you have kind of the dual nature, perhaps, of femininity being represented by Jackie and Marilyn. Like,
Ooh, that's a really because they are kind of like that's right. They both could be part of this, like this mother goddess, this fertility, because like one's the light side and one's the dark side, and maybe that's how they fit together. That's
right.
great.
And traditionally, in many myths, we have multiple figures that make up the moon. And we have like the moon phases. Can you?
I had to step away for a second. It's getting kind of dark in here.
Oh, we've talked before about many of the moon archetypes being like threefold or in
Yes,
some cases
yes.
fourfold. There's multiple aspects of the moon that in combination kind of represent the totality. But even with the Virgin Mary, you have just kind of one isolated aspect of femininity that I think is out of balance in many ways, right? She's the Virgin Mother. Um, Marilyn Monroe is kind of the opposite of that, right? Like she's not known for being a mom. She's really known for being a sex symbol and these, more promiscuous. I'm not saying she is or
Yeah,
was. I'm saying this is how she's represented in the culture. And then Jackie on the opposite end, she was certainly considered they both are fashion icons. And I think
that's
this goes
right.
back to there's a lot of themes that can be analyzed simply through fashion, which is super cool and fun to me. But even through that, you also have I'm like mixing a lot of ideas here, but like Jackie obviously is kind of considered more conservative. But you also have, like we spoke earlier about there being a spiritual king and a like real king.
Mm,
You have that kind of going on here as well for America. You have Marilyn Monroe, who's kind of this like, in a way, spiritual queen. You know, she really was ascendant. She was huge, right? And then you have Jackie, who's more the formal queen, who actually like goes to all the formal rituals, who hosts, you know, dignitaries and things like that. But Marilyn's in the mix. Like Marilyn met the queen, you know. But anyway, I just think it's interesting. They kind of represent these different aspects of the feminine, of the moon.
yeah, that's a fantastic observation. And then if we do bring Jackie into the mix, it starts to circle back around when you start talking about JFK Jr., right? Because JFK Jr. has some date synchronicity to the Apollo missions because he dies on July 16th, 1999, the day that Eyes Wide Shut comes out and is the 30th anniversary of Apollo 11 launching off. So, like, how does, like, I have to think through it. It's like JFK Jr., like the philosopher's child or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how this all works out schematically and like it works out, but I feel like we're just scraping the surface of this. I feel like
I
Austin
mean,
wants to
one
weigh
other
in.
thing, just that the intentionality of her life is pretty interesting. I mean, you talked about her dreams. She dreamt about being adored by lots of men, and even that setting, being in a church. I mean, in a church, you're supposed to be in your best behavior,
Yeah,
and there she's transgressing, and then she's being, appreciated for her transgression. So, I mean, her telling that story and then her changing her name from Norma Jean to Marilyn Monroe, and like Marilyn, that it's related to Virgin Mary. So there's that connection. And I thought, like, I searched for it, maybe Monroe could be related to like Monday is related to the moon day. So I thought maybe Monroe, but it's
they
not, it's
say it's
related to some
not.
river.
They say it's from like a river in Ireland or something like that, which is interesting in and of itself. But I'm not prepared to give up on that. Like you, like month is connected to moon. So even if it etymologically is only traceable to that river in Ireland or something like that, the Row River of, I think it's Mon means of, like of the Row River or something like that. Even to us, I mean, I think it's subconsciously embedded into us that the months are regulated by the moon, and month gets its name from moon month. So
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about the intentionality of her life, the way she lived it, and the name changed, like MM, you always talk about MM being 33. So, if you turn M sideways, so it's 33.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, things like that.
yeah. We get
So,
that 33
sh-
number throughout. I've got a slide to kind of get into the numinosity of the number 33, which it's probably going to connect back to this philosopher's child thing, like the Christ figure, Osiris, whatnot.
but the zeitgeist thing that Jordan talked about, that her and Jackie representing two sides of femininity, one side that's a bit more conservative and bit more, pious in a way, and then the complete opposite of it. So it's like, it's a weird thing. I mean, the president of the country and he's being talked about in relation to these two women. So it's like, in the culture, there's a conversation happening between, like, a male being, pulled upon by two sides of two types of women, or
Mm,
like two sides of femininity. So, I mean, there's a triangle going on.
yeah.
I don't have anything profound to say, just the
No, that's
cultural
great.
mix of
That's
all this
great.
thing.
I think we should keep going because we've got a lot to cover here, but I know it's getting late. Um, I'll try to be quick about these next two. Okay, since we've talked so much about the alchemical marriage so far, I think these are just for future reference. Something I've been a little bit confused about ever since we really started going down this line of research. It's like, is the moon the anima? Is the moon the great mother? Is the moon the collective unconscious? At different points, I think I've talked about it in these different ways. And I think the answer is yes. It's all of these things at different times, right? How it's presenting itself as the symbol. And we can talk about the role of Mercurius in all of them. But what I don't want to, because it's getting late, we've got a lot to do. I don't want to dwell too much on this, but I think this will be a handy little reference guide for us going forward. You can see like the different aspects of it. You know, we talk about the anima being the other half of the alchemical marriage. We talk about it as possibly being this matrix-like womb that gives rise to the philosophical child, and the stage itself that all these different archetypes are appearing on. Like we've looked at all these different like archetypal movements that are happening on the moon, whether it's like Jack and the Beanstalk or the Garden of Eden story or whatever else that we seem to think that are happening there. It would make sense if the moon itself was somehow a representation of the collective unconscious, that there are these eruptions of archetypes on its surface. And Jordan, we can go to the next one too. What I've done here, what I was trying to do here is, and I'll be very brief about it. I wanted to introduce a new vocabulary word for us, since I've never really said it on stream before, which is syzygy. I believe this is how it's pronounced, syzygy. And that's just kind of a fancy way of talking about the two opposing principles within the alchemical marriage. What I'm doing, what I need to do as I go along with this sort of research is like create a glossary, create an index. I've even got some terms at the end that are relevant. And I think even before I really start writing things out hardcore, and maybe I'm just trying to keep a running list of this terminology. I've introduced some of it, like amplification. I believe last time we've talked about the hierogamos, a variety of other issues, but this is another one of those words I wanted to bring into our conversation. So I wanted to share something from 491. If I've not talked a lot about Edward Edinger, I want to do so here. If we can get, yeah, there we go. So I was listening to this lecture. So to my chagrin, there are some recordings of Edward Edinger, a pretty profound disciple of Carl Jung, that are out there on YouTube. It's kind of amazing. I don't even know, I'm sure how many people listen to this one, not very many. But Edinger did a lot of contextualization and communication of Jung's ideas. I actually have this Aeon Lectures book that I need to get into. But the reason why I'm bringing our attention to it, as I was listening to this one uploaded by Simon, it's Edward Edinger, The Psyche and Antiquity. I think it's part of like a 12 series lecture series, 12-part lecture series, which you can find on the younginla.org website. You should pay for it. I think he just uploaded the first one. Either he has the rights to do it or went rogue and did it. But what was so striking to me about this is that Edinger is one of the few people who actually have done what we're doing here. I have talked about us trying to analyze the collective in terms of these Jungian archetypes. What was the phrase that we came up with, Jordan? Hyper-associative mythic mapping, right? I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe we came up with that mouthful. Those $10 words sound very fancy. Edinger did this as well. He had his own things that he was concerned with. I think he was concerned primarily with politics and war and geopolitical movements and things like that. But I was searching for the words before as we got started, but he actually called it archetypal psychohistory. And it has everything to do with like the God image. There's a lot to say here, but this text, the Aeon Lectures, and also I believe his book Ego and Archetype are going to be like absolutely essential to getting. So I need to figure out how he did this, because I'm kind of just figuring it out as I go. I think what's interesting is I'm noticing that there's like a lot of convergence. Like other people who've tried to tackle this freight train have kind of fallen into same. I'm noticing that like I can't be all wrong because we're all kind of ending up with similar conclusions. But Edinger is going to be the dude to consult for this. And it's archetypal psychohistory. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. One point. I mean,
Sure.
this term archetypal psychohistory. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been thinking about this thing for the past few days. That
Yeah.
uh, uh, even reading this, the Fraser thing today, it brought to my mind that mortality of the gods. It instantly brought to my mind the ideas of Nietzsche, and he talks about, you've got to kill God. God is dead, and we have killed him. Things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like was he trying to invoke all these ancient religions, because the most famous book of his is Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and it is about a Babylonian religion. It's pre-Christianity, about 2000 years pre. So it's like, uh I mean, he's trying to move back to some sort of elemental state. And what I thought about then, I mean, all these ideas, I thought that it's not that things keep happening. It's like the mind is arranged in such a way that similar things keep happening.
Yeah.
So if we know the archetypical psychohistory, we'll know what's gonna happen next after this. So it's not like someone is arranging them. It's like people are gonna do that regardless. It's like ingrained in the mind in some
Well,
way.
yeah, that's
So
I was that's you were having a little bit of a synchronicity because like 2 nights ago, Ostic, I was thinking about this as well, especially if it can be established that the Manhattan Project and the Apollo Project are linked archetypal narratives, right? And so is this Kennedy assassination thing as well, and the Solar King and the White Queen and all this other stuff. I don't know. I'm seeing connections and mapping, and they could be real, they could be not real. Like you, it would seem like, wait a second, like this, do I have like predictive power? If I can see this in the past, right? Would we not be able to foresee the cycle repeat? And then if that were the case, like we could get out in front of it and like use it to our advantage in some way. But I'm not exactly sure when it begins and it ends. And as we've seen also looking into this, like it seems to like coil in on itself too. Like we've seen little narratives like pop up like during individual missions and with the naming conventions of the capsules and the namings of the programs and the namings of the astronauts. And okay, now we're going to what was like the focus is like Apollo. It's like, okay, now we're reaching all the way back now to the Manhattan Project. So now I've got to account for all of that. Like, where does it begin and end? When does one cycle end and another begin? And if I can say, okay, now it ended in 1972 and a new one started, and that's going to go for X amount of years, and it's going to happen again. Like, what are the markers? Is it a time marker? Are there archetypal markers? Will I ever be able to make predictions? What was interesting, we've talked about a shared influence. I learned a lot of like the code breaking, the cryptography, which ultimately gave way to this interest in archetypal psychology from our Rich from One Eyed Jacks, and he died in was it 2019 or 18? I forget, but just before COVID. And if you like go back and watch all his videos, he is constantly talking about corona, corona, because he fixated on this as like an aspect of the language. And it's like, had he lived like another 6 months, like I just want to know what he would have thought. Like it would have blown his mind. He had no idea that COVID was going to happen, but it was on the tip of his tongue in pretty much like every video there for a while.
yeah, sure. I mean, that's that's a fascinating thought, that you might be repeating something that you're not even aware of it. So
Yeah. So yeah,
it's
so we could be talking about something since we're like tapped into it. We could be talking about something that could we could be tapped into something, not know it, and it's going to manifest in some way here.
it might. I mean, our next schedule, if we make our next appointment, it's going to be on the anniversary of the death of the president, and we're going to be discussing the chapter that's supposedly called the killing of a king.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. It is lining up that way, isn't it?
I mean, we did not plan it that way. So,
No. It's interesting. What do you think, Jordan?
What you're talking about, like these cycles through time, these archetypal patterns that continue to play out, makes me think of the I Ching. And that's, at least from what I understand, a big part of the I Ching is, we're in this constant flow of time. And when you come into relation with the I Ching, you're kind of tapping into and locating yourself in the larger cosmic flow. And if you zoom out enough and if you have a high enough dimensional awareness of reality, you can kind of see where these things cycle through. The trick is situating yourself. We talk a lot about the book of Revelations and you know, it's one thing to kind of have a map of these cycles. I think it's quite another to be able to accurately locate where the collective is in these cycles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Jung himself did not necessarily believe in the predictive power of the archetypal stuff, but that doesn't mean it's not there. But, he wasn't really into the whole idea of like using astrology and alchemy and what like that to know the future. Although I think he did have some apocalyptic visions. I haven't gone too deep into that, but yeah, I think it's an open question, especially since Apollo. It's something I think about a lot. We're going to talk about it here in connection to the bees eventually, but Apollo is a god of many things. One of them is the god of prophecy,
Mhm.
and where I think I found an element of that, like, but like, where does this prophetic element in the Apollo mission happen? We've talked a bit about the ESP experiments that Edgar Mitchell did on Apollo 14 at some point, or maybe I intend to talk about those at some point with the Zener cards and whatnot. Um, but where does this whole prophetic element fit into this story? Still working on that. You hanging in there, Ostic? Do you want me to skip to bees and then you can peace out, or you want to keep going the ride here?
we gotta keep going.
All right, all right. You're
Okay.
gonna. All right. Um, just a little bit more on Edinger. This was an interesting article I found in Psychology Today, an interview with the late Jungian analyst Edinger. He did talk a little bit about space and its relevance to his archetypal psychohistory. He didn't go too deep into it. Um, and he was talking about like the image and how ultimately it would change the consciousness of individuals and lead to sort of a collective re-understanding of oneself. I'm not going to read it because it's not super relevant to our point. Well, something I mean, it is relevant, but I can't go into it all right now. What I do want to point out when going over this material, um, we've talked about the unusual number of jacks associated with the Apollo missions, and we have two moonwalkers, or two individuals that would have moonwalked amongst the Apollo astronauts. The one, and I just kind of realized putting this together, is that Jack Schmidt was the one who actually took our first real photo of the Earth in its entirety. The blue marble was taken on Apollo 17, the concluding mission to the moon. And we finally were like, yep, there's the Earth. Like, good thing all our math totally worked out and the Mercator got the map right. It's exactly like we always thought. Nothing to see here, right? What's interesting about this, there's a lot of really interesting things about this, is that the image of the Earth from outer space is very much like a mandala in some ways. These interpenetrating elements of the unus mundus that are communicating wholeness, a mixture. I have another mandala there above it, and I think it's appropriate to view these objects of science as manifestations of archetypes that are worth dwelling upon. But it does raise some interesting questions too, also about Jack producing the marble. I just kind of said it to myself over and over again. Like, it's like marbles are like something you play with as a kid, right? And jacks too. They're like two different games. We got Jack and marbles, and okay, like maybe I'm stretching here, but if we are seeing the concluding mission to the moon as the production of a spiritual philosophical child that communicates this new sort of cosmic consciousness, it is kind of interesting that we have a child's game associated with the image of the earth. And also this name Jack is associated with, we've talked about Jack and the Beanstalk, but like really there's a whole canon of stories known as Jack tales, right? We Jack and the Candlestick, Little Jack Horner, et cetera, et cetera. And I got me thinking about who Jack is. And maybe we should go to the next slide, Jordan, if that's okay. There are Jungian analysts that have identified Jack from these Jack tales as a trickster, like kind of a mischievous, doing good, but also telling lies, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, okay, this like adds like some dimensions to it on like a lot of different levels. Not to mention that the man that set this all off, JFK, is a Jack, right? So we've got our Jack astronauts, we've got our Solar King named Jack. It's so there's a lot of things I want to say about this. The first is like I just Googled JFK moon landing books, right? And these were two of the most popular that came up. John F. Kennedy and the Race to the Moon, and that one's a little too little. What's that other one say? It's by Brinkley. Can you read it, Jordan? Or I'll zoom in on it.
American Moonshots. What are you trying to read? The subtitle?
Yeah, John F. Kennedy and the Great Space
The Great
Race.
Space Race.
Right. Okay. So if I just swap out the name JFK with Jack, like how much do these sound like Jack tales? Jack and the Race to the Moon, Jack and the Great Space Race. They sound like children's stories. They sound like morality tales.
I mean,
And it's
there's
just,
a verse in the
yeah, go
Bible
ahead.
that says, "When I was a child, I acted like a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things." I mean, is it is it not? I mean, I read that
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Bible once.
I think it's from it might be from Ecclesiastes. It sounds like Solomonic wisdom.
Yeah, put away childish things. So I thought like maybe you talked about the marble being a child's toy, and now you're talking about child stories. So I'm thinking about that. And Kubrick was interested in fairy tales while
Oh
making The
yeah,
Shining.
yeah.
So it's like
The
all
text,
those.
Bruno Bettelheim's what's it called? Something Enchanted, something like that. Those
Yeah,
were
yeah.
the Bruno Bettelheim stuff.
So there might be something in there that fairy tales have some sort of an effect on people, on contemporary culture. So this is what he might be pointing towards. I mean, you've already talked about Jack and the Beanstalk, and now even serious literature is being, as you are demonstrating right now. It reads as if it's a fairy tale, as if it's a Jack's tale.
It I don't think any of these people are trying to make it that way. Like they're just like I mean, it they're just describing reality. They think they're giving like accurate historical renditions of the events. They don't think they're making a Jack and the Beanstalk story. But if like you came across one of these books like 500 years from now, you're like, what is this?
I mean, if there's a new cultural consensus, then we'll have this discussion. What were these guys thinking? Things like that. They'll think of us as pretty much foolish people, primitive people, and some guy in the future like he would be a successor to Fraser, and he'll write about us.
Yeah, there'll be a future Fraser like analyzing us like Celtic primitives or something like that. Can you believe they took this shrine and shot it into the sky? It's no different for it's similar to the maypole or the burning of the effigy or whatever. It's crazy. So I wanted to I I don't think this is right. I'm not even but I think this is like going to be rewarding. This archetypal wheel. Jung never said there are 12 archetypes. There's like thousands of archetypes. But it became very popular to say that there are 12 archetypes, just as this the 12 apostles, the 12 moonwalkers, the 12 knights of King Arthur's Round Table, et cetera, which, by the way, the research I'm doing on Camel, because the more JFK becomes part of this, the more Camelot is part of this, the more Camelot is part of this, the more Arthurian legend is part of all of this. So Jesse Weston's response to Fraser was romance to ritual. Like, we're going to have to get into that. So, but I'm just kind of building this. I'm not committed to any of this. Like I've said, like maybe Neil is the innocent archetype because he's like the first man, right? Like the innocence of Adam recreating the Garden of Eden on the moon. But then it's like, if we have these multiple Jacks, Jack Kennedy, but also here with the astronauts, this is the guy that I have here on for the Jester is Jack Swigert. And I never would have really thought about putting him there, but I think there's something to be said about like the evolution of the trickster figure. So Jack Swigert was like this like last minute replacement on Apollo 13. I think that's right. And it kind of, it was kind of emblematic of the chaos of that mission. Or was he the one that stepped down? Anyway, he either came in or stepped down. It was just emblematic of the chaos of that mission. But then we have Jack Schmidt take the photo, and it's kind of like the trickster figure evolves into the magician, or I guess maybe potentially the divine child playing marbles. So I'm not sure I love these designations. I'm not even sure any of this will work out, because it kind of like requires me doing like this in-depth like psychoanalysis of every single moonwalker or participant. But I don't know, just kind of playing around with it. I mean, I always kind of think of Pete Conrad as more of a jester figure, but I don't know. I've got to learn. I've got a lot to learn still.
It's an infinite game.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be mapping infinity. I think that's the thing I've learned from all this. Well, no, true. I mean, it's really I just see all this like conspiracy culture. It's like numerology slop and like chart slop. It's so much slop. Like, you really, I don't know if it matters how much you nail this down. What kind of matters is like the new philosophical paradigm. Maybe it's not new at all. Maybe it's like reintroducing alchemy to everybody
Yeah.
through this myth.
Oh, is it that Neville Goddard quote that's like, when you get the message, hang up the phone?
No, I don't know that.
He's referring, I think, to psychedelics, but reality is psychedelic.
Yeah.
I think it applies to pretty much any analysis of the realm that has this infinite nature to it. You can study the gematria forever. You could study the symbolism forever. Whatever layer you're in, once you start to kind of see the pattern, it's, I think, kind of time to take a step back and go up a level.
Yeah.
And it's natural that we're going to kind of go deep into these different layers, but it is infinite. It will keep generating examples for you as long as you engage with it.
No, it's true. It's like being in a tar pit. Like, it's like hard to get out of. So I mean, I kind of, the way I look at this, the way I'm sort of capping it, is that I'll develop these ideas alongside our study of the Golden Bough, and then I don't know, I'll probably take after we're done with that, probably take a year or two to get it all written up, and then I'll just be walk away and I'll be done.
Sure, sure. It sounds so neat and tidy.
Yeah. No, I will have solved the mystery.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna throw on this other light. You guys chat for a second.
Oh, okay.
I mean, wouldn't it be better for him to write a theory fiction novel, like a lot of philosophers have decided to write, like Nick Land and all those
Mhm.
people?
Yeah, maybe. Um, yeah. I think that's a very personal thing, what naturally comes through you. But I agree, fiction can be an awesome way to impart wisdom. And then there's some authors who seemingly capture a lot of these metaphysical concepts really well, but they swear up and down that's not what they're doing. It's so funny to me. Ursula Le Guin, I think, is a great example. People would always ask her like questions about kind of the philosophy behind what she did, and she was like, "It's fiction." But
And that's a good way to have plausible deniability, is what I think.
yeah, it
Because
could be.
if
Yeah,
people could, get up to you and accuse you of different things, but then if you have some sort of a plausible deniability, I mean, I didn't mean that. I mean, it's only a story. I mean, I've just stated the facts, but
yeah,
it's like it can help in some ways. I mean,
yeah.
especially if you're a very known public figure, because public scrutiny that can, like, you know cut a lot of people the wrong way.
Depends on what game you're trying to play. Luke's trying to play the popularity game.
Yeah, clearly. I got into this for legions of
Uh-huh.
followers.
Mhm.
Yeah. My
I mean, I
takeaway is you
wish you
need to be
did.
more like
What's that?
my takeaway is you should be more like Nick Land.
Uh, uh, maybe.
I'm
Wait,
joking. It's a joke.
I'll be on Tucker in 15 years.
It's a joke.
All right. Let's uh let's go 494.
Oh, yeah. We didn't talk about this yet?
No. We are I yeah,
I feel okay. We
yeah,
talked about it.
we may have
I didn't
talked about
realize
it.
it. Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, we're making okay time. You okay over there, Ostick?
Mhm.
He's all right. He's in the long haul here. Okay. So last time Jordan was like, "Oh, I bet the color blue of the background on the NASA logo is meaningful because I pointed out the red and the white hinted at the red and the white queen, the red king and the white queen in the alchemical
Mhm.
marriage." And then we talked about the space sex that's going on here, the penetration, et cetera, et cetera. Not even thinking about the blue background. And it's very strange about the blue background. It doesn't, like, space isn't blue, right? Like the way that's presented to us, it's black.
But what is?
Well, the the ocean is, right? Now, the explanation for why they have this blue circle behind the NASA logo is that this is a planet, right? That this is to give you the idea that you're looking at a planet, which I guess maybe makes sense if you're in outer space and you're looking through the stars at a planet. I don't know. That's not how the blue marble looks. There's no, and I'm not going to get into like all the physics of it. Okay. But to me, when I look at this, I think water. Okay. And, you see here with the Mercury 7 astronauts, they're posing in front of that blue background. Maybe it was just picture day. I mean, I remember doing picture day when I was in elementary school, and I think we probably had a blue background at some point. Um, but it got me thinking about the color blue, or just water in general, being associated with Mercury. And it's even like in the name. So here, Hg is the modern chemical symbol for Mercury. It is an abbreviation of Hydrogeum, a Romanized form of the ancient Greek name for Mercury. Hydrogeum has also been used in English, though the term is now dated. Hydrogyros is a Greek compound word meaning water silver, the root of water and silver. Okay, so this has something to do with its like water-like Mercury having like water-like properties. Um, that that got me thinking because we think about like Mercurius being associated with this like chthonic spirit of the world, which I'm going to get into maybe in the next slide, like the Anima Mundi or whatever. But that's also associated with like the abyss and oceans and whatnot. So I think that kind of checks out. Not to mention in some alchemical pictures, like the one I have here beneath Alan Shepard, um, something known as the mercurial fountain, where this prima materia like is constantly circulating, kind of like how the Ouroboros is constantly devouring itself. So there is some element here of water being associated with Mercurius. And the other thing the other things I wanted to share here, this picture of Alan Shepard is so crazy when you like start to think about this, there being something alchemical going on here. Like you see, it's like dry ice. Like they made it like they made him. It's almost like I don't. It's almost like he's like in a vase or like he's like being like distilled or something like that. It's so crazy to think about this, all this alchemical symbolism that we're talking about, him in the midst of like what looks like a laboratory, like a science, like like a wizard's
Yeah.
experiment that's gone wrong. Or right. It's supposed to be like the it's I guess it's supposed to be a simulation of the rocket taking off, but isn't that wild?
Yeah, it makes me think of magic tricks too,
Yeah.
where they use smoke to
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a cool music video.
Yeah. 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 Like a music video from like the 80s. Um,
Well, maybe it is water.
yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like, is this a potential disclosure of the firmament too? Right? Like, where are we
Hmm.
going?
Yeah. Not to mention all of the air bubble stuff.
Right. By the way,
Right.
the Mercurius, in when it's portrayed as water, is also called aqua permanens or living water. So it's just a nut. When we come across these alchemical symbolism, it's another way to understand what we're looking at. Okay, like I wouldn't be able to decode any of this prior to all this investigation.
Is that related to the Fountain of Youth?
I don't know. I think,
Okay.
I mean, the Fountain of Youth is probably going to be connected to the Grail, and the Grail itself is going to probably be connected to
That's
all of
right.
this.
The crater.
Right. And the Grail is going to be connected to the moon because like the moon is like
Yeah.
going to be this receptive chalice that like is going to be where the alchemical magic happens. So I
Next
haven't been,
week, huh?
yeah, well, if I get to it next week, it's a lot. Ostic, what do you think about all
Yeah.
this?
I mean, even looking at that classical image of you talked about the marriage between the Red King and the White Queen. Even looking at that small illustration, I mean, if I squint my eyes because I'm squinting right now,
Mhm.
so I was seeing some sort of rocket launch in my own sense. You know,
Yeah, doesn't it kind of look like that?
it's like rocket launch. It's going to happen. It's there.
Ooh,
I mean, that's how it looked to me
it
there.
does look like that.
So the illustration on that particular slide, I mean, what is it? Below, yeah, this one, like the Mercurius illustration.
Yeah, that's the mercurial fountain.
Yeah, I mean, that looked like a rocket to me. So these
That's
things,
that's great. I'll have to look more into that. There was this quote here. Jung actually has so much to say about Mercurius. It's crazy. I'm still trying to figure this out, but like in some, I think he might like this from alchemical studies. Mercurius is an adumbration of the primordial light bringer. who is never himself the light, but who brings the light of nature, the light of the moon and the stars, which fades before the new morning light. Because, yeah, there you go. It's almost like he's saying that an aspect of Mercury is Lucifer, which will be something to go deeper into. I mean, we've looked at Mercury having these poles, right? So we'll look into that. But I'm not prepared to speak too much more about it. He has a lot to say about Mercury. There's a book I think by Michael Mater or something like that called Young and Mercurius, which might have to go into that super in depth one day. We'll see. But yeah, that's the image right there.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah. So like all these like alchemical images are kind of the same thing, like over and over again, but like they swap out parts. Like sometimes it'll be a
Mm-hmm.
mercurial fountain, sometimes it'll be a tree, sometimes it will be, the red king and the white queen, or sometimes the sun and the moon, or it's interesting. And it makes sense in a way, like Jung. Like I'm wondering, like, Jung has given it a psychological interpretation of it, but like what did alchemists really think they were doing? Like you see, like we're learning the symbolism, like we're kind of like, okay, that element's there again, that element's there again. But like, did the alchemists think that they were like creating cosmic consciousness? Is that what they really thought they were doing?
Why not?
Well, it raises an interesting question about why it was dormant for so long, and it took Jung to promulgate this understanding of it that very few people have access to.
Yeah, I mean, just because it isn't commonly understood, I wouldn't say it was completely dormant.
By the way, you see the divine hermaphrodite here and like laying down or whatever. I'm not sure if this is conception or death or both, and that
Yeah.
might relate back to Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe as the Red King and White Queen simultaneously, not simultaneously,
Interesting.
respectively. So I've got a lot to figure out about this, but
Yeah.
you can see that I'm taking that child in the cloud. There's the philosopher's child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This slide
A
is
lot
deeply
here.
informative. I mean, did you make this one?
Which one? The one that
Or is it a
she's.
website?
Oh,
Like,
it's a website.
no.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
right.
they're going through the Philosophoria,
Rosarium
the
philosophy.
Rosarium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I've
Yeah.
not done yet. I've picked up a few slides here, a few images here and there, but I
Mm-hmm.
need to do it. I'm
We're starting
trying.
to piece together the language more and more.
Yeah.
Like the first time I read through that, I guess last summer, I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And now it's starting to make a lot more sense.
Yeah. We got our moon tree there. We've got the divine
Yeah.
hermaphrodite on top of the moon rolling over it. We've got the crown of enlightenment. We've got the mercurial serpents. Like, think about how far we've come.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Should we go to? Yeah, let's go to
Yeah.
495. This is. I'll make reference to the bees here. So something else. I haven't had a chance to really get into the number 7. Like, why are there 7 Mercury astronauts? We've looked at the Apollo 12 moonwalkers and them being about completion, and I think I still have some work here to do on the number 7. But I think one potential explanation of this could be um, traced back to the relationship between Apollo and Hermes or Mercury. By the way, I think uh, before they were established as being separable planets, I believe Mercury was also believed to be Apollo at one time. So like when it appeared in the morning, it was Mercury. When it appeared at night, it was Apollo. And then when they fine tuned their astrology or astronomy, it became different. But the story mythologically is that Hermes stole a bunch of cattle from Apollo, and he got really mad about it. But when he found Hermes, he found him playing this 7-string lira, like that he made with like a turtle shell or something like that, right? And the music like calmed him down, and Mercury's like, I'm sorry about taking the cattle, here, take my lyra. And this is kind of how Apollo became god of music in one way. We associate him with these 7 strings. And I think esoterically, the 7 strings of this lyra that Mercury gave to him represent the 7 planets, and I guess the Pythagorean understanding of the harmony of the spheres, or the music of the spheres. Not to mention like steps of initiation, 7 archonic deities. I think that might be what this 7 is talking about. 7 different realms that Mercury is which I guess he consists of. He's a part of it, but is also like taking us on the psychopomp journey through. So that might be what the 7 is connected to, intentionally or unintentionally. Also, we'll get to this a little bit later. I guess we can bring it up now since I've been holding out on Ostick. Why don't we go to the very last slide, Jordan? Why don't we go to 505? Since we're already on the story about Apollo and the bees. The bees were seen, I believe it's slide 505. The bees were seen as being connected to Apollo's prophetic abilities. And in this trade, and there's a whole story about bee goddesses. I don't have that mastered, but anyway, part of this trade for the lyra that Hermes gave to Apollo was that he gave him these bees that allowed him to have sort of prophetic insights as well. So we've got these, and I got down this path of research. I'm like, there's a lot of bugs in the Apollo mission. We talked about the moon buggy, but specifically there's like bees and hornets in Apollo 11. So we have Buzz, right, Aldrin, and then they get picked up by the USS Hornet, right? And I think, and not to mention that, like this whole like bee symbolism is like throughout like the space program. Like this is the James Webb telescope here on the left. Like it's a bee honeycomb. Like what are we doing? Like what are we doing here? Like I'm sure there's like science reasons for this, but like what are we doing? Also like on the International Space Station, they have these floating robots, and I guess they're called robo bees. They just like are these little cubes, and they color them like bees, and they fly around and do science experiments and stuff like that. The beehive is a very alchemical symbolism. Not only does it communicate industry and order, but bees in themselves are kind of considered to be nature's alchemists. You know, they gather the raw materials that ultimately are transformed into golden honey, right? The gold, right? This is like the goal of alchemy, supposedly. So I was told this in like 2nd grade, is we were trying to make lead into gold, and it was a silly endeavor, which never really made sense to me, because it's like, well, why is that silly? We do all sorts of silly things that end up being possible through enough scientific industry. But you see this beehive symbolism. It's in, you know, it's in secret societies, it's in Mormonism, it's in alchemy, and it seems to be here too. Not only is it about the great work about taking something base and turning it into something higher, which might be man's consciousness. It's also about collectivity. I think it's about the mass mind and transforming the hive into something else. I think that's what this bee stuff is, and potentially connected back to the story between Mercury and Apollo. Now, there's many other stories about bees in mythology that I don't really know all that well, but I do find it interesting that we have 2 subsections of the space program connected by this bee imagery. So that's what the bees are.
You've had
I never
bees
always.
following you all
Oh
week.
yeah, and everywhere I've gone, there've just been bees like showing up in weird places.
Yeah.
Since when I got into this slide, it was like bees everywhere I went in different weird contexts. It was very synchronistic. Oh, not to mention, I wonder too, like, because bees are like seem to be like about fertility, like birds and the bees or whatever. I wonder if this somehow plays into like the carnal knowledge of the Garden of Eden story that we see on the moon. Um, but that's not as strong as I think it them being like nature's alchemists and like, oh, of course, we've got a busy little bee astronaut up there. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, it's like, oh, he's turning the base material into gold.
What they mean for me personally, like when they land on me a lot, is embodiment of the higher self, which I do think is what a lot of this alchemy is about.
Busy bee.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm on a Christopher Guest kick. We saw mascots. You've seen Best in Show, right, Ostick?
No, not what I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's okay. Does Jordan know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I
Okay.
was just sharing something that was personally very profound to me, so
And then I interrupted it with a silly quote. Sorry.
I've always thought about this beast things, that how important their queen is to them.
Yeah.
That people talk about like they cannot survive without the queen. So when people tell me that, oh, we have made this whole civilization, you should marvel at how good, and we as human beings, we should follow our orders. I tell them, even ants and these bees, they follow orders. So it's not that you're following orders is not a sign of intelligence. That's what I tell them, because even these bees and these ants, they don't even have brains, they only have nervous systems, and they follow orders all day since the moment of their birth. So you don't talk about, equating intelligence with following orders and, being in some sort of discipline. And that's an aside.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea of, bees, them, literally churning out gold, and
Yeah.
then the astronauts themselves
Yeah.
in this whole alchemical thing. I mean, it's beautiful.
It is
If
beautiful,
it's,
isn't it? Like, oh, it's really I found when this it's really rewarding to make these connections. You got to work for it though. And it's not going to be given away.
Mhm. I don't know, like, there's definitely the usage of this symbol to talk about, like, everyone doing their role and being in their place and following directions and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and yet, like, the consciousness of bees is not the same as it is for humans. So, like, it's almost to like projecting a human experience onto them because when I like connect with them, it's more like they are. I mean, you talk about a hive mind; they share a mind,
Hmm.
which is different than not having a mind. And maybe mind's not even the right word,
Yeah.
but they're kind of different concepts to me. It's not like one bee listening to the other bee because the other bee has authority over it. They are like more intimately connected in their consciousness to one another. Like it's like a super organism instead of, and perhaps we are too and in denial about it, but
Well, I thought this gets into great questions about free will. Um but going back to what Ostick had to say about queen bees, I mean, you have to wonder if there's a message here also about these mother goddesses that we're serving. Like we go back to JFK's Rice speech. It's like, why do we go to the moon? We don't really know. Like, why does Rice play Texas? Like, cause it's and then he says, oh, cause it's there. As if that's like explanatory, right? Like that's like something like a mother says to a child, like, why do we have to do this? Because I say so. Or like just because. It's not like really a reason. And it perhaps it's emblematic of like this unconscious hierarchy that we automatically follow in service of the goddess. Like we are no different than the drones serving the queen bee when we have these aspirations about going to the moon. And then this gets into question, like, are the archetypes of the collective unconscious I talked about this when I went on Aeon Bites and doing that essay on Jung. It's like the archetypes of the collective unconscious. I think Jung says about it coming out in like honeycomb, like in the animal kingdom. It's like not only are the archetypes displaying themselves in human history, they're expressing themselves in insect community. It's not just the human mind that is structured in this way. It's the entire reality, which may be a product of God's mind. And this is how God has decided to build reality, or as an expression of his mind. That it's happening with our moon landings and also in the construction of a hive. All right. So retracing our steps, this is kind of like throwaway trivia, but potentially provocative and insightful. Something I found with digging into this whole like Mercury 7 stuff is that I believe his name was Jerry Anderson, the creator of this 60s puppet show called Thunderbirds, which I believe was an inspiration perhaps for the South Park movie where they used marionettes. I think he also did that Space 1999 movie that we were watching. But he named a bunch of characters on Thunderbird Mercury 7 astronauts, which is just like weird. I guess he was like a big fan of space. But of course, I couldn't help but think about like the irony of naming these marionettes after, Mercury 7 astronauts. It got me wondering about like whether or not there are like Pinocchio themes in the space missions. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So we definitely, I mean, the biggest tell that we do is the intentional mispronunciation of Gemini, the way that like real insiders say it, like the way you say it is Jiminy, like Jiminy Cricket. So I, I suspect that there is some alchemical archetypal story going through all of that, but that's something I'll be exploring in the future. I don't have a lot to say about that. That was interesting to me. Not to mention, like how like the astronauts train, like they train on like harnesses, and this is supposed to simulate gravity or on the moon and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe we need to watch more of it. I'm admittedly much more familiar with Team America.
Yeah, there you go. That's what that movie was called, Team
Team
America.
America
Yeah,
World
yeah,
Police.
yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which exposes another controversy
yeah, yeah.
potentially.
Frere Jacques. All right, okay. Let's go to 497. This is like just kind of drilling down more on the symbolism. We've talked about the Hermetic staff and potentially its connection to Alan Shepard playing golf on the moon, et cetera, et cetera. But what I did not really think too hard about when we were looking at the meatball logo, that is actually two snakes entwined. And that seems very obvious, especially when we talked about like there might be like a sexual dimension to this. But really, if you take the red chevron, by extension, you see this coming out of a serpent's mouth or whatever, then you see two entwined or two intertwined snakes, and that this could be a potential reference to the Hermetic staff or to Mercury's staff, where these entwined serpents are again a symbolic portrayal about the conjunction of the opposites. So we just another element referencing back to Mercury here. And then I got to think, I kind of zoomed out a little bit, and you see the NASA logo like on a rocket. Like if you are seeing these intertwined serpents on a rocket, it does very much start to look like the caduceus in my mind. Like if you see that decal on the side of it. And then maybe you could argue if you see the logo they had during like the 70s and 80s, the worm logo. I mean, you could say that kind of looked like the staff of Asclepius or Asclepius or whatever his name is, the one that you see on like the side of ambulances or whatnot. But yeah, so I just was pointing that out. and we can go to 498. This is kind of recapitulation of some of the ideas that we've talked about.
Hmm.
I mentioned the idea of Mercurius being kind of present throughout the entire alchemical process as being a chthonic spirit and prima materia, and this mediating factor in the opposite with the opposites, and then also as a result being the philosopher's stone and the child. Um, I think there is some reason to think that it is, I guess we could call it the spirit of the world. There are in alchemical pictures Mercurius as the anima mundi. And if you don't mind, Jordan, can you read this passage from
Of course.
Carl Jung's Psychology and Religion? Can you see that there on the bottom right hand
Yeah, I
corner?
was making it bigger.
Okay.
God is an intellectual figure whose center is everywhere and the circumference nowhere. As one of these philosophers said, repeating St. Augustine, a man as introverted and introspective as Emerson could hardly fail to touch on the same idea and likewise quote St. Augustine. The image of the circle, regarded as the most perfect form since Plato's Timaeus, the prime authority for Hermetic philosophy, was assigned to the most perfect substance, to the gold, also to the anima mundi or anima media natum, and to the first created light. And because the macrocosm, the great world, was made by the Creator, quote, in a form round and globose, the smallest part of the whole, the point, also possesses this perfect nature. As the philosopher says, quote, of all shapes, the simplest and most perfect is the sphere, which rests in a point, its image of the deity dormant and matter. As is said in the Timaeus, only the demiurge, the perfect being, is capable of dissolving the tetrachus in the embrace of the four elements.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to talk about the tetrachitis or whatever that is,
Yeah.
but I think it's interesting the idea about this hermetic expression about God being the circle whose center is everywhere, and then like you do have this Ouroboros within it, kind of as it is this imprisoned anima mundi that has to be
Hmm.
liberated and transformed. So that feels like that tracks to me in the symbolism that we're looking at. So last time we were looking at color schemes, we've looked at it a little bit with the blue today and associating it with the mercurial fountain and the aqua permanens. But
Hmm.
I think that the circular aspect of it containing this, I mean, then we have you look at it a different way. It's like a spirit inside of this embryo, or a spirit
Yeah.
inside of an egg, right? Or an ovum, which is what we're talking about. That's another symbol, like the philosopher's egg. So, um, I'm sure I could say a lot more. I mean, really, we're just building vocabulary. And it's the idea that Mercurius is this hidden god in matter.
Mm.
So we're just getting pieces of the puzzle. If you go to 499, um, these eggs, this god hidden in matter as a Mercurius, it made me wonder because it's like all this if there is this alchemical union that's happening with the space missions and the production of the Philosopher's Stone, it made me wonder if somehow this Philosopher's Egg could be associated with the moon. And there is some imagery of this, like in Orphic and Hermetic Mysteries or whatnot, of the Philosopher's Egg being you see here on the left being associated with the moon. And I don't know how far we can take these symbols, but here we have like the cosmic Orphic egg with the snake being curled around it. So, is this tracking with our understanding of what's happening here? I don't perfectly understand this like bull figure and the chaos that it's introducing. I've not figured that all out yet, but this image is really just established that there's a potential connection between the philosopher's egg and the moon.
Yeah, this is cool.
You like that? I mean,
Hmm.
I didn't make that. I stole it from somebody's Instagram or forget
Yeah.
where.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the idea is it's like an incubation, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you talking about the embryo in the previous slide. That
No,
that was interesting.
no.
I saw something today apparently about how when like sperm and an egg kind of come together, it emits light. I thought that was really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I think they've air quotes known about that. I mean, I've not personally observed this. Like
Sure.
I've heard about this phenomenon. I don't know exactly when they first documented it, but it was a big deal, and it's something I think I remember even hearing something about it in like the 90s in my biology classes and be like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." Like and I think the way they tried to explain it was like a chemical reaction with
Mhm.
like zinc or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But going deeper into all this stuff, it's like, wait, is this actually like when ensoulment happens? Like I think that's kind of like
Right.
people are like, wait, this is like when you get your body, like you get sent down from another realm and sold at this moment.
Yeah. I have a similar reaction to calling things symbolic. And then to me, that's not a bad thing. It's not a belittling thing. Saying something is the product of a chemical reaction. Well, the chemical reaction is one layer of the mechanism,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense. You're just describing the
Yeah.
physical like layer of it. It's not dismissive to me.
Yeah. Okay. Um I've talked about this a little bit. I started to make like a glossary
Mhm.
of these terms. I don't this is not exhaustive, but I was like, okay, I just need to and we don't need to go through it all right now, but like even for this presentation, I was just like, okay, I said to ChatGPT, I was just like, okay, all these different terms that we've pulled here, you can just go between 500 and 502 if you want. Um, let's get these all into a table. And like I said earlier, I think I'm going to have to just make a glossary for this work.
Yeah.
But we don't need to go too much into it right now. We can skip to 503. This was just an interesting synchronicity. Um, I got so deep into all this mercury study, like I couldn't. And when I was like looking at the chemical name for mercury, with it being Hg, I was like, oh wait, like you're telling me there's like a space program called Mercury, and its destination of the moon is partially inspired by H.G. Wells. And then I was like, but there's also a mercurial fountain, which is a well that the mercury comes out of. And I was like, wait, this is crazy, right? So like when I like look at this very um prominent H.G. Wells book that foreshadowed some elements of the Apollo mission, specifically like them taking off from Florida, I was like, okay, like is this just like the first men in the moon mercury fountain, like rereading the name, like how I did that thing with like JFK and the Great Race to the Moon, like now it sounds like Jack and the Great Race to the Moon. It sounds like kind of like a Jack tale. And maybe this means nothing, but it's one of the interesting things about this, and I didn't realize this, the other thing that I know H.G. Wells from is the War of the Worlds. And wouldn't you know, um, and this is a weird parallelism that H.G. Wells is then read by Orson Welles. It's always confused me as a kid. He did this on his program called the Mercury Theater on the Air. Like I didn't know that's what it was called, the Mercury Theater. And so these, so H.G. Wells, like this figure that in a way is inspiring uh, in an imaginative way, in a real technological way, our ascent to the moon is connected to Mercury in name, kind of, and through world historical event. Not to mention, in a practical way, his works very much inspired Robert Goddard, who is one of the most famous rocket scientists. I believe he was the one who invented the liquid fueled rocket, if I have that correct. And he got his ideas, or partially, from H.G. Wells or the Mercurial Fountain. now, I don't know. Is this poetic license run amok? Is this God having fun?
Yeah. What's pattern recognition and
Like
what's
this
mental
is,
illness?
yeah, yeah. I think I have the AI psychosis that I keep hearing
Yeah.
about. So
It's fun.
it's fun. It's fun, guys. We're just having fun.
Mhm.
All right, last one. We've talked a little bit about Jack and the Beanstalk. There seems to be another element that's relevant to this manifestation of this narrative in the events. One of the big things that they did after coming back from the moon, presidents, I mean, you see here Nixon, he's presenting a moon rock to a senator or the governor of Delaware. I'm not exactly sure who that is. But astronauts, Nixon, other individuals, they were just giving away moon rocks like they were candy. And a story that a lot of like flat earth people picked up on is that like in the Netherlands, they went to go have their moon rock appraised, and it was supposedly from Apollo 11, and it turned out to be petrified wood. And so a lot of flat earth people go, see, it was all fake. And you can't, unless you're going to say that there are trees on the moon, which no one would ever claim. The explanation for this is that that this was a bureaucratic slip up, that a diplomat tried to pass something off as real that was not real, and that this is, you can't make a mountain out of a molehill and indict the whole program because one rock turned out to be not legitimate and really the result of human error. That this is interesting because, you know, this is, if it is petrified wood and it was claimed to go to the moon, it's a moon tree, right? Which kind of gets into this whole idea of the tree to heaven narrative that we picked up on. But what's really interesting about this is that there's like a lot of crazy things involving these moon rocks. So they gave them all out, and then at some point it was made illegal to be in possession of one, or to try to sell them or anything like that. So they have like whole task force where people try to entrap individuals for selling moon rocks, and you can go to jail for it. It's like technically deemed like government property. They really don't want people having these things in private collections, which raises an interesting question. Why were they given out so freely in the first place? And it's really not helping the case that, you know, people will go, okay, because of this, how this one rock got exposed, they don't want other rocks to be appraised and make the program look bad. But this got me thinking, like, how would you how would you even like appraise or know, like, what's the unique constitution of a moon rock? Like, how would you even know if it came from Earth or from the moon? Like, how would you know? Like, unless someone's like, yep, that's from the moon. Like, how do you even go about that? And geologists say that there is a unique chemical composition that only moon rocks show that could not have happened here on Earth. And I go, okay. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, don't they find like meteorites and things like that, like on Earth? And where do those come from? And it turns out that there are lunar meteorites that have been found. And I guess they found the first one in like the early 80s, in like 1982 or whatever. They have found lunar meteorites in Antarctica and in like the Sahara Desert and really everywhere. So then I was like, okay. And you're allowed to have those. Like, if you go to Antarctica and you find a lunar meteorite, you're allowed to own that because it's not government property. But then I was thinking, like, how do we know that these things weren't, like, how do we know a lunar meteorite is a lunar meteorite? Because it's compared against the moon rocks, but you're taking on faith that the moon rocks are legitimate to establish that you picked up a lunar meteorite. It's not like they found the lunar meteorites before the moon rocks. They found them in the early 80s. And now they're finding Martian rocks too in the same place. So I think we have a problem here. Like, what's to stop someone from picking up one of these rocks, passing it off as a moon rock, and then later claiming that ones that were found accidentally are lunar in origin when they're really in Antarctica or the desert or something? I can't believe I shouldn't be saying this.
No, I mean, you can explore this and still maintain a reality that we went to the moon. right? Like, I don't think those are mutually exclusive avenues to explore. But I've been learning about hearsay
Yeah.
and what hearsay is, and it's like a verbal statement made outside of court to support another statement, basically. And that's kind of what you have here, right? You have an uncertified in terms of we don't have like a true chain of custody that you and I can evaluate. We didn't see it collected. We weren't there. There's no
Mm.
way for us to affirm that. And yet we're using that to confirm another instance, another statement that, oh, this is a moon rock too. It's logically not airtight. You have to at
Yeah.
some point believe in authority. And that's fine. Like if you want to do that, that's fine. But that's not sufficient evidence for me personally.
Well, the argument against this is, well, the argument that you would have to employ against this is that, wait, what are you saying? There's like a worldwide multi-generational conspiracy to pass off lunar meteorites as moon rocks that were never obtained from the moon in the first place. And so it's like I don't know if that's like an appeal to incredulity. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Oh God, I look stupid right now.
No, you're fine. I mean, it doesn't, again, like I'm not saying this.
Incredulity.
There you go. I'm not saying this is my worldview, but it really just takes one person to hand out a bunch of rocks and say, hey, these are moon rocks. And they're not
Yeah.
actually moon rocks.
Yeah. The appeal to incredulity is a logical fallacy where someone dismisses a claim as false simply because they find it hard to believe or understand rather than based on evidence. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. Well, you know.
All right. Okay. So the other thing about this too, the giving of the moon rocks archetypally, just the symbolism of it, it's kind of like a physical manifestation of the cosmic consciousness that's potentially born out from the alchemical union, right? So we have this philosopher's child that's born. It's a spiritual, ethereal concept. And it's like, well, here's the moon rock. Here's to and make to kind of, you are included in it. It is being distributed amongst mankind, which I think is kind of interesting. So it's very literal. These are very literally stones, right? This is like the philosopher's stone made concrete and distributed in a symbolic way. I think that has like some resonance and some appeal. I remember being like 9 years old, and when I didn't really understand what was going on in the world, but they tore down the Berlin Wall, and like people were like chipping away at it and bringing it back with them and passing it around, and it was like a holy object. Getting back to the whole idea of like relics and things like that, it was like a holy object that we were allowed to hold and see, and we kind of were a part of it, right? Like we felt like we were involved in the struggle for
Hmm.
democracy.
Yeah, they have
It's
a
similar.
chunk of it at the Bush School at A&M and like the
Yeah.
statue of like horses like
Yeah.
trampling over it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But yeah, it's a similar thing. It's like a memento, kind of like a party favor handed out to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I was there. Okay. That's all I have for today.
That's it.
That's it.
That's a lot. Thanks,
That was a
Luke.
lot. All right. Next week.
Bye.
Bye.